The answer choices here make it very clear that we are testing transitions, right? I mean, they're all transition words. And we should know from our predict the question strategy that that means that this is an ideas question. It's the one exception where we don't have a literal question, but they are testing ideas. And that helps us then because it's not about what transition word is going to sound best. In fact, I think with a lot of these transitions, they all sound weird because we don't say things like nonetheless very often in our own, conversations. But they're real words, and you should memorize how to use them. But dumb summaries are the best way to kind of memorize them and to deal with the sentences themselves in the paragraph. So the first thing I would notice is that by contrast, the one that's the no change option, and nonetheless, kind of mean the same thing. In fact, you might also throw the word besides in there. I'm not going to, but it also has some kind of contrasty vibes. These two things, though, both mean some version of the word but. And without reading the sentence, I would be 98% sure that both of them are wrong. Because they can't both be right. I mean, if they mean the same thing, how is that possible, right? They can't both be right, so they must both be wrong. And this is a real trick that actually works on many of these transition questions, and I think it's very helpful because sometimes it's very difficult for us to understand the correct transition, and so using this tool to eliminate two of them really helps out a lot. Now we have an easier kind of decision, right? Is this an example or is it this other weird one, the besides? So let's take a look at the sentences themselves. Because CT scanners can map objects that are impossible to excavate, CT scanning and 3D printing can also be used to reproduce fossils that scientists cannot observe firsthand. So, okay, I don't know. They cannot observe them. Okay. I'm going to skip that actually. Let's not read what's there. Researchers from the National Museum of Brazil has relied on this technique to study a fossilized skeleton that was discovered protruding from a rock at an old Sao Paulo railroad site. Okay, so they cannot observe them firsthand, so they used this technique with the CT scanners and the printing. I mean, that's a pretty clear example of an example, right? Like they're talking about what these techniques do, and then they're talking specifically about the National Museum of Brazil, which is using one of these techniques to study this one skeleton. So what does besides mean? Who cares? Doesn't matter. We have a nice match. In this case, I think besides is kind of like nevertheless in a way that it's dismissive. It's dismissing the previous sentence as kind of like, oh, this doesn't matter. This is irrelevant. But obviously it's relevant. They're next to each other, and they do talk about the same thing. So that's also why besides is a bad choice. But I think you can get this very proactively here just by seeing that it's an example. But these kinds of dumb summaries of the words themselves, the transition words, very helpful. I have a chart in my study guide I'm going to plug. It's very helpful for kind of dumbing these words down so that you can, more easily understand what you've got.